Wind in Boston that night didn't just blow, it bit. It had teeth made of ice that gnawed through layers of denim and wool, seeking the warmth of blood beneath. For 17-year-old Leo, the cold was a living thing, a predator he had been fighting for 3 years. Ever since the foster system spat him out onto the concrete streets, he pulled his collar up. It was a thin canvas jacket he'd found in a donation bin 3 weeks ago. It smelled like stale tobacco. But tonight, it was the only armor he had against the blizzard that was burying the city in white silence. Leo checked his pockets. Empty, no food, no change, just a crumpled flyer for a shelter that was already full by noon. He ducked into an alleyway between a high-end bakery and a jewelry store. The exhaust vent from the bakery usually puffed out warm, yeasty air. It was his secret spot, his little slice of heaven in a frozen hell. But tonight, the vent was cold. The bakery had closed early for the storm. Leo cursed under his breath. A cloud of white vapor escaped his lips, vanishing instantly into the dark. He was about to curl up behind a dumpster, resigned to another night of shivering sleep, when he heard it. It wasn't the wind. It was too rhythmic, too human, a soft, hiccuping sound, like a puppy whimpering in a box. Leo froze. His instincts, sharpened by life on the streets, screamed at him to keep moving. Curiosity killed the cat. But in his world, curiosity got you mugged, arrested. Or worse, but the sound came again, louder this time. A sob that broke into a cough. Leo crept forward, his boots crunching softly on the fresh snow. Behind a stack of wooden pallets, tucked into the corner where the brick walls met, was a bundle of blue. It was a parka, a tiny, expensive-looking down parka, and inside it was a boy. He couldn't have been more than 5 years old. He was curled into a ball, his knees pulled to his chest. His face was buried in his mittens. He was shaking so hard the pallets rattled against his back. "Hey," Leo whispered, keeping his voice low to avoid spooking the kid. "Hey, little man," the boy's head snapped up. His face was a mask of terror. Tears had frozen on his cheeks. His lips were a dangerous shade of blue. Don't hurt me," the boy stammered, his teeth chattering like castanets. "I ain't gonna hurt you," Leo said, holding up his hands. They were red and raw, covered in grime, but he kept them open. "You're freezing. Where are your parents?" The boy pointed vaguely toward the main street, where the snow was swirling in a blinding vortex. I let go of Daddy's hand, the balloon. I wanted the balloon. Then the white stuff came down fast, and he was gone." Leo looked at the boy's eyes. They were heavy, glazed, hypothermia. Leo knew the look. He had seen it on his friend Marcus last winter. Marcus hadn't woken up. Panic, sharp and cold, pierced Leo's chest. He looked around. The street was empty. No police cars. No frantic parents screaming names, just the howling wind, and the indifferent city lights blinking through the storm. If he left the kid to go find help, the boy might fall asleep and never wake up. If he took the kid with him and the cops saw a homeless teenager dragging a wealthy child through an alley. Well, Leo knew how that story ended. Handcuffs, accusations, prison. But then the boy looked at him, a look of pure, desperate trust. "I'm cold," the boy whispered. "I want to go home." Leo closed his eyes for a second. He cursed his own soft heart. He crouched down. "My name is Leo." He unzipped his own canvas jacket. The wind instantly attacked his thin t-shirt, stealing his body heat. "We're gonna get you warm, kid, but you gotta trust me." The construction site on 4th Street was Leo's backup plan. It was the shell of a new luxury condo building. Ironic, considering who was about to sleep there. It had walls, a roof, and most importantly, it was out of the wind. Leo carried the boy, whose name was Toby, on his back. The walk was only 4 blocks, but in the blizzard it felt like a march across the Arctic. Every step was a battle. The snow was knee-deep now. Leo's sneakers were soaked through, his toes burning with that numb, stinging pain that warns of frostbite. "Keep your head down, Toby." Leo grunted, shielding the boy's face with his own body as a gust of wind tried to knock them over. Almost there. They slipped through a gap in the chain-link fence that Leo had pried open weeks ago, inside the concrete skeleton of the building. The air was still freezing, but the deadly bite of the wind was gone. Leo found a corner piled with dry drywall sheets and insulation foam. All right. Leo set Toby down. The boy was lethargic. His movements were slow, like he was moving through underwater syrup. That was bad, very bad. Leo sat down on the insulation foam and pulled Toby into his lap. He took off his canvas jacket. "Here," Leo said, wrapping the dirty, tobacco-smelling coat around the small boy over the top of his expensive parka. "Put this on, like a blanket. But you'll be cold," Toby murmured, his eyes drooping. "I'm from Boston, kid. I got ice in my veins," Leo lied. He was already shaking uncontrollably. He pulled Toby tight against his chest, sharing every ounce of body heat he had left. He rubbed the boy's arms, his back, trying to generate friction. "Talk to me, Toby," Leo demanded, his teeth clattering. Don't. Sleep, tell me about your room. What's it look like? Toby blinked, struggling to focus. It has stars on the ceiling and a big dinosaur, a T-Rex. A T-Rex? Leo forced a laugh. That's cool. I always liked the raptors. Fast, smart. They sat there for hours in the dark. The city outside was a muffled roar. Inside, it was a battle for life. Leo felt his own energy draining away. His fingers were stiff claws. His mind started to wander, drifting to memories of his own mother before the drugs took her, before the foster homes, before the streets. He remembered her singing. He started to hum, a low, raspy tune. You are my sunshine. Toby shifted. He reached a small, gloved hand out and rested it on Leo's freezing arm. You're nice, Leo, Toby whispered. My dad, he's nice too. He's gonna be so mad I got lost. He won't be mad. Leo said, his voice slurring slightly. He's gonna be the happiest guy on earth. Leo reached into his back pocket. He had half a granola bar. He had been saving it for breakfast. It was the only food he had seen in 2 days. He unwrapped it. Eat this. He commanded gently. Sugar. It keeps the engine running. Toby took a small bite. You eat too, the boy insisted. Leo shook his head. I'm stuffed. Had a big steak dinner before I found you. Another lie. His stomach cramped with hunger, a sharp, gnawing pain, but he watched Toby eat the crumbs, and for a moment he felt full. As the night deepened, the temperature dropped further. Leo realized he couldn't feel his feet anymore. He wrapped his arms tighter around the boy. He became a human shield, a heater, a brother. If one of us wakes up tomorrow, Leo thought, watching the boys breathing even out into sleep, it's gonna be him. He leaned his head back against the concrete pillar. He didn't pray often. He figured God had forgotten his address a long time ago, but tonight, he looked up at the unfinished ceiling and whispered into the dark, just keep him warm, that's all, just him. Morning broke with a blinding, cruel brilliance. The storm had passed, leaving the city buried under 2 feet of pristine white powder. The sun reflected off the snow, turning the world into a dazzle of light. Leo woke with a gasp. Pain. Agony shot through his legs and hands as the blood tried to circulate back into frozen veins. He groaned, trying to move his fingers. They were swollen, red, and stiff. He looked down. Toby was still asleep in his lap. The boy's cheeks were pink. His chest rose and fell in a steady, healthy rhythm. Leo exhaled a cloud of steam. Alive. They were alive. We gotta move. Leo rasped. His throat felt like he had swallowed glass. Toby, wake up, buddy. Toby stirred, rubbing his eyes. Leo? I'm hungry, I know. Leo struggled to his feet. His knees buckled, but he caught himself on the wall. He picked Toby up. The boy felt twice as heavy as he had last night. We're going to find your dad now. They exited the construction site. The city was waking up. Snowplows scraped against the asphalt, creating sparks. People were digging out their cars. Leo stumbled toward the main plaza, the Boston Common. He knew there was a police station near the Park Street stop. He looked like a nightmare. His hair was matted with drywall dust. His t-shirt was stained and wet. His lips were cracked and bleeding, and he was carrying a clean, well-dressed child wrapped in a filthy, oversized canvas jacket. He saw the looks immediately. A woman walking her dog crossed the street to avoid them, clutching her phone. A man shoveling his sidewalk stopped and stared, his eyes narrowing in suspicion. They didn't see a hero, they saw a threat. Leo kept walking. He just needed to get the kid to the station, just 2 more blocks. Suddenly, a siren chirped, short, sharp. Leo flinched. A police cruiser skidded to a halt next to the curb, spraying slush onto the sidewalk. 2 officers stepped out, hands resting on their holsters. Their faces were hard, tense. Hey, you, the older officer barked. Stop right there. Leo froze. He held Toby tighter. Leo's voice failed him. It was a dry croak. I'm taking him. Put the child down, the officer shouted, drawing his taser. Now step away from the boy. Toby woke up fully then. He saw the angry men. He saw the weapon. He started to scream. No, leave him alone. Leo slowly knelt in the snow. It's okay, Toby, Leo whispered, though his heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. Go to them. They're the good guys. Toby clung to Leo's neck. No, he's my friend. He's cold. The officers advanced. The scene was attracting a crowd. People stopped to watch, whispering, Is that the kidnapper? Look at him, he's a junkie. Poor kid must be terrified. Leo felt the familiar weight of the world's judgment. It didn't matter what he did. It didn't matter that he had almost died to keep this boy warm. To them, he was just trash. Officer, please, Leo said, raising his hands, showing his palms. I found him last night, in the alley. I was just keeping him safe, likely story. The officer sneered, grabbing Leo's arm and twisting it behind his back. Cuffs clicked. Cold metal on frozen skin. We got a report of a missing child matching this description. You have the right to remain silent. Leo didn't fight. He didn't have the strength. He just watched as a female officer wrapped a thermal blanket around Toby, pulling him away. Toby was reaching out for him, crying Leo's name. Leo hung his head. At least the kid was safe. That was the deal. He surrendered to the darkness creeping into the edges of his vision. The exhaustion finally took him and his legs gave out. The last thing he heard was the crowd murmuring and Toby's small voice screaming. He gave me his coat. He gave me his coat. The police station was chaotic, phones ringing, radios squawking, the smell of stale coffee and damp wool. Leo sat in an interrogation room, handcuffed to the table. Someone had given him a cup of water, but no blanket. He was shivering violently, his teeth clicking together uncontrollably. The door flew open. It wasn't a cop. It was a man in a disheveled cashmere coat. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. His eyes were wild, red-rimmed, frantic. Behind him, the police captain was trying to calm him down. "Mr. Sterling, please, you can't go in there. Where is he?" The man shouted, "Where's the boy who had my son?" Leo looked up. This was Mark Sterling. He recognized the face from the billboards downtown. Sterling Real Estate. The guy who owned half the buildings Leo got kicked out of sleeping in. Mark stopped. He looked at Leo. He saw the dirty t-shirt, the frostbitten fingers, the utter exhaustion etched into the teenager's face, and then he looked at the table next to Leo. There in an evidence bag was Leo's filthy canvas jacket, and next to it was Toby's expensive blue parka. Mark turned to the police captain. "Why is this boy in handcuffs, sir?" The captain started. "We found him wandering the streets with your son. We're processing him for possible abduction charges. We need to ascertain." "Processing him?" Mark's voice broke. It wasn't angry anymore. It was trembling. "My son, Toby, he told me everything." Mark walked over to the table. The officers tensed, ready to intervene, but Mark didn't attack Leo. He knelt down, right on the dirty linoleum floor. He was eye level with the homeless teenager. "Toby said you found him behind the bakery." Mark said softly. "He said you carried him to a building because the wind was too strong. He said you gave him your coat and your food. He said you sang to him so he wouldn't fall asleep." Leo looked down at his hands. He was just scared. Leo whispered, "He's a good kid, likes dinosaurs." Mark stared at Leo's arms. He saw the goosebumps. He saw the blue tinge of his fingernails. "You froze yourself to save him." Mark realized the horror and gratitude washing over him in a wave. "You took the clothes off your back in a blizzard." Mark stood up. He turned to the captain. "Take those cuffs off him now." "But Mr. Sterling," now Mark roared, a sound that silenced the entire precinct. "This boy isn't a criminal. He's the only reason I'm not planning a funeral today." The captain nodded to an officer. The keys clicked. Leo rubbed his wrists. He felt dizzy. Mark took off his own cashmere coat. Without hesitation, he draped it over Leo's shoulders. It was warm. It smelled like expensive cologne and safety. "Come on, son," Mark said, his hand resting gently on Leo's shoulder. "We're leaving. Am I free to go?" Leo asked, looking at the cops. Mark looked at the officers with a gaze of steel. "You're with me, and if anyone has a problem with that, they can talk to my lawyers." They walked out of the interrogation room. In the lobby, Toby was sitting on a bench, drinking hot cocoa. When he saw Leo, he dropped the cup. "Leo," he ran and hugged Leo's legs. Mark watched the reunion. He saw the way his son clung to this street kid. He realized that while he had provided Toby with a mansion, toys, and everything money could buy, last night, this homeless boy had given Toby the one thing Mark couldn't buy: his life. Mark wiped a tear from his eye. He knew in that moment that a simple thank you wouldn't be enough, not even close. 3 days later, Leo sat on the edge of a hospital bed. The doctors had treated his frostbite. They said he was lucky. He would keep all his toes, though they would be sensitive to the cold for the rest of his life. He had eaten 3 square meals a day. He had taken a hot shower that lasted an hour. But the knot of anxiety in his stomach remained. He was being discharged today, back to the streets. The hospital social worker had already given him a list of shelters. The door opened. It was Mark Sterling. He was holding a file folder. Toby peeked out from behind his dad's legs, holding a toy dinosaur. "Hey," Leo said, swinging his legs over the side of the bed. "Thanks for the medical bills, Mr. Sterling. I really appreciate it. I'll pay you back someday." Mark chuckled softly. He walked over and sat in the chair next to the bed. "Pay me back, Leo. There isn't enough money in the Federal Reserve to pay you for what you did." Mark opened the folder. "I did some digging, Leo. I know about the foster homes. I know about you aging out of the system. I know you've been trying to finish your GED at the library during the day while sleeping in Alice at night." Leo stiffened. "I manage. I'm fine." "No, you're not," Mark said firmly, "but you're going to be." Mark handed him a piece of paper. It wasn't a check. It was a deed and an acceptance letter. "I own a building on 4th Street, the one where you hid Toby." Mark pointed to the paper. "We're finishing the construction next month. The penthouse unit, it's yours, paid for, in full, in your name. You can live there, rent it out, sell it. Whatever you want, it's your home." Leo's mouth fell open. He stared at the paper. The letters swam before his eyes. "Mr. Sterling, I can't. This is crazy," and Mark continued, ignoring him. This is an enrollment letter for the Sterling Foundation Scholarship. We cover tuition, books, and living expenses for any university in the state. But there's a condition. Leo looked up. There was always a catch. What is it? Mark leaned forward. You have to come over for dinner every Sunday. Toby insists. He says you promised to teach him more about raptors. Leo looked at Mark. He looked at Toby, who was nodding vigorously. For the first time in his life, the walls Leo had built around his heart crumbled. He wasn't looking at a landlord or a cop or a social worker. He was looking at a father, and he realized he wasn't looking at the streets anymore. Tears, hot and cleansing, spilled down Leo's cheeks. He tried to wipe them away, but Mark pulled him into a hug. A real fatherly hug. Okay. Leo choked out, sobbing into Mark's shoulder. Okay, I'll come to dinner. 6 months later, the Boston snow had melted into spring. Leo walked out of the library, a GED certificate in his backpack. He walked down 4th Street. He stopped in front of the finished condo building. He looked up at the top floor, his floor. He wasn't just surviving anymore, he was living, because on the coldest night of the year he had chosen to be warm. And that warmth had set the whole world on fire. Thanks for watching. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe and visit the channel for more real-life stories.